If he utters one threat, he will truly regret it.
The president himself actually held talks with his two top diplomats.
Nobody loves a peaceful solution better than President Trump.
We should not allow ourselves to be held hostages by this erratic regime.
If anything happens to Guam, there's going to be big, big trouble in North Korea.
Mr. President, as the governor of Guam, I have never felt more safe or so confident with you at the helm.
This is not a president that anybody ought to take anything but deadly serious.
What options are on the table right now to deal with this mess?
We have many options for Venezuela. And by the way, I'm not going to rule out a military option. I think General Kelly has done a fantastic job. Chief, I call him Chief. We should have had health care approved. I was not impressed. Can he do good? I think so.
You have Republicans who are trying to pass legislation, and you have what I call rhinos, Republicans in name only. They stabbed the American people in the back.
Especially if you're camping out.
Oh, yeah. Guess what, guys? Welcome to Fox and Friends on this Saturday morning. We've got a bowling alley outside on our plaza this morning. I was walking, I was like, what in the world is going on? It's National Bowling Day.
National Bowling Day. Last year, we kind of had a jerry rig set up in the other studio.
Right.
This year, we went full deal.
Yeah, this is not a dinkety bowling alley. This is like...
No, that name, Dinkety.
Yeah, dinkety.
Dinkety.
Yeah.
Dinkety.
And Bass Pro Shop is here, which we always
there.
love. Oh, that's
Right
a pretty
there.
good,
Right there. It's
pretty good shot.
Yeah.
But that would have been a
You'll
strike.
see it later on.
I always say, I've been saying this for years, if you've been following me, that I mark my seasons by when Bass Pro is on, and I'm excited for fall. Fall means football, fall means chili, fall means beer, and the fall hunting class.
For our hunters out there, it means hunting.
Yeah, it's starting to feel a little bit like fall.
It's a little cooler today, and so we've got a lot going on in this 4 hours and a ton of news. Always, when you wake up on a Saturday morning, a lot of news to get to, and that is where we begin with a Fox News alert. And President Trump speaking on the phone with China's president overnight about the escalating tensions with North Korea.
Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un throwing a massive military march in Pyongyang as he continues to threaten the United States.
So where are we with all of this? Let's check in with Lauren Blanchard. She's live in Washington, D.C. with the very latest on this. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, Abby P. Clayton. Well, it was in this phone call yesterday that the Chinese president asked both the U.S. and North Korea to tone down the rhetoric before it worsens the situation. China has long maintained that dialogue is the only solution, but it also said it can't force North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions, despite being the North's largest economic partner. On the call, President Trump agreed he wanted a peaceful solution, but wasn't going to back down if North Korea acts on its recent threats.
Nobody loves a peaceful solution better than President Trump, that I can tell you. Hopefully it'll all work out. But this has been going on for many years. Would have been a lot easier to solve this years ago before they were in the position that they're in. But we will see what happens. We think that lots of good things could happen, and we could also have a bad solution.
Even as China is calling for a peaceful resolution, new photos out showing thousands of military officials marching in Pyongyang in support of their leader Kim Jong-un, while their state TV said any more reckless behavior from the U.S. may, quote, reduce the U.S. mainland to ashes any moment. North Korean state TV also threatened the U.S. for the harsh new sanctions leveled on them by the United Nations Security Council. China did vote in favor of those sanctions, and on the call, both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to enforcing them. Abby P. Clayton.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much.
Very much.
Meanwhile, what's happening in Guam? Of course, we hear, Kim Jong-un threatening that island.
Ring of fire around Guam is what he threatened originally.
Right. Where is the United States in all of this? Well, the president wanted to reassure Guam that we are 1,000% with that country, and the president called the governor there, Governor Calvo, to reassure him of this. Take a listen to what he said.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to speak to you, and I just wanted to pay my respect. And we are with you 1,000%. You are safe. We are with you 1,000%. And I wanted to call you and say hello. How are you?
Mr. President, as the governor of Guam, representing the people of Guam, and as an American citizen, I have never felt more safe or so confident with you at the helm. So with all the criticism going on over there from a guy that's being targeted, we need a president like you. So I'm just so thankful, and I'm glad you're holding the helm, sir.
Wow, that
telling statement.
I mean, there's so much noise going on in the background. You know, you go on social media, you're like, what on earth is actually going on here? And you listen to that phone call. That is what is important right now. These conversations between leaders. I mean, Guam they are the ones that are threatened, right? They're
in the crosshairs.
They are.
If you look at the map where these missiles could hit, it's, you know, that ring that goes out and reverberates out like ripples into a pond. They're right in the middle of it.
And North Korea can accurately strike in that area as well. I mean, we forget Guam is 12,000 kilometers from Washington, D.C. So all these reporters in D.C. that want to freak out about what do I do, get my blankie and huddle and duck and cover for nukes. It's like Guam actually has to deal with that. And they're living in history in a tough neighborhood. So when he says we're happy to have you at the helm, that is a rejection of the so-called strategic patience of the Obama administration that knew what the capabilities were in North Korea and didn't take tough, decisive action.
Meanwhile, a lot of people are saying President Trump is being too tough. Too tough right now. A lot of his media critics are coming out saying that he's being too tough against Kim Jong-un, that this could escalate us into nuclear war. Meanwhile, where did this all start? The president has been sitting there watching as Kim Jong-un has been launching these missile tests over the past 4 months, 5 months, trying to stir up the pot in the Pacific. So the president doubled down yesterday on his tough talk, and he's responding to some critics that think he's being a little too tough right now in his messaging. Listen.
He utters one threat in the form of an overt threat, which, by the way, he has been uttering for years, and his family has been uttering for years, or if he does anything with respect to Guam or any place else that's an American territory or an American ally, he will truly regret it, and he will regret it fast.
Mr. President, you've said you wanted to send a strong message to North Korea. What do you say to your critics who say that your rhetoric is actually raising the tension?
Well, you know, my critics are only saying that because it's me. If somebody else uttered the exact same words that I uttered, they'd say, what a great statement, what a wonderful statement. They're only doing it, but I will tell you, we have tens of millions of people in this country that are so happy with what I'm saying, because they're saying, finally, we have a president that's sticking up for our nation and, frankly, sticking up for our friends and our allies.
You know, to that point, there are people out there, no matter what the president says, they are out to attack him. You remember on the campaign trail, he was criticized for the opposite reason, for being too friendly with Kim Jong-un. You know, he was praising the guy or whatever.
Sit down with him. I remember he said that.
Yeah, and now, you know, the cards have turned, and he sits around the table with the generals that he has surrounded himself by. I mean, that gives me the most ease in this whole situation, is knowing who he has handpicked to help him navigate this very tense situation. All of them have such a great resume. They're also well respected. So whenever we talk about, I mean, you look at what the Democrats have been saying, what these celebrities have been tweeting on social media, and I have to take a step back and say, you know what? You're not in those meetings.
And whose side are you on? These 64 Democratic senators that wrote a letter to Rex Tillerson saying, turn down the bellicose rhetoric, fire and fury. Rex Tillerson's in the meetings with H.R. McMaster, with Secretary Mattis, advising this president, saying, maybe you got to ratchet up the rhetoric, create a brinksmanship moment where they really do believe we have a credible threat of military force. That's when you get a diplomatic end. But if your enemy doesn't believe, or your adversary doesn't believe they'll use military force, they never give in. You know, a detail that came out this week that I think is critically important as well. In 2013, the DIA assessed, this is 4 years ago, that North Korea already had a miniaturized nuclear weapon capable of being delivered. That was during the Obama administration when they still talked about strategic patience. Would you rather have a leader that tells the truth to you and says this is a real threat that we need to address, or a leader that says, oh, nothing to see here, no real threat, but now they have nuclear weapons and they can deliver them? It's a stark difference, and if the American people aren't prepared for it, it's because the threat was hidden from them for years.
The messaging for years was North Korea will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. There we are now.
But
oops, they do.
Yeah.
But you asked the question of what side are these Democrats on, and maybe these celebrities. I don't know if you saw Rosie O'Donnell on social media, what a nightmare. But Keith Ellison, who's the deputy DNC chair, she says that Kim Jong-un is acting more responsible than our president. Here's what he said.
North Korea is a serious thing. You have this guy making bellicose threats against somebody else who has very little to lose over there. And Kim Jong-un, the world always thought he was not a responsible leader. Well, he's acting more responsible than this guy is. And what I'm telling you is that once you start seeing missile launches, you're going to see the time for cranking up the anti-war machine is right now. If you don't want to get caught deer in the headlights, start calling for diplomacy in North Korea immediately.
course, no one wants a nuclear war. I mean, it wouldn't be just 100,000 people that die. It would be billions of human beings that would be killed as a result. But wouldn't it be? I mean, when nuclear missiles going off.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into numbers, but I mean, if Guam is being threatened, which is an unincorporated territory of the United States, you know, if a part of the United States is being threatened, we're going to be tough
citizens.
Right.
Also, is there ever a time where we can't be political? I mean, I feel like our culture has become so politicized that you always have to disagree with what the other side is saying. When you're dealing with something as serious and as concerning as this North Korea threat, you would think this is a time when both parties, regardless of your background, regardless of your race, regardless of your political affiliation, you would come together and say, we've got to be on the same page here.
This could have been the moment when I found the unicorn. That Democrat willing to support President Trump. You'd think at a time of war, but instead Keith Ellison says, ramp up the war machine because we got a Republican president taking us to war. Where was the anti-war machine during the intervention in Libya? Where was the anti-war machine? It wasn't there because it was a Democratic president under Barack Obama. If it's President Trump, they're going to resist. So politics should stop at the water's edge. It isn't in this instance.
You know, during the commercial break on YouTube, I'll show you some unicorn videos.
Oh, gosh, look what you've started, Pete.
Videos of Democrats supporting this president. I'll be ready to see them.
All right, we do want to bring you some other headlines we're following this morning, starting with the Fox News alert and President Trump rejecting a request from Venezuela's president to speak by phone just hours after refusing to rule out military action to help solve that country's months-long political crisis.
People are suffering and they're dying. We have many options for Venezuela, including a possible military option if necessary.
The socialist country is dealing with deadly riots as it attempts to rewrite its constitution. President Trump says he will speak with the president once democracy is restored, but has not given any orders to the Pentagon. And to another Fox News alert now, the terrorist group Al-Qaeda now has a new target in America, subway trains. Well, the latest issue of the terrorist group's magazine, Inspire, is headlined Train Derail Operations. It describes ways to attack trains, describing derailments as simple to design with easily available materials and hard for authorities to detect. Well, there are more than 10,000 miles of train rails in the United States. That is frightening. And we are getting a new look inside the White House as extensive renovations are underway. Crews are replacing the aging heating and air conditioning system, laying new carpet and restoring the South Lawn steps for the very first time in decades. Workers emptied the Oval Office as soon as President Trump left for a working vacation in New Jersey. I will say this to that. My husband and I moved yesterday, moved apartments, which sounds like a great idea until the move day. You're like, why do we do this?
Especially when you're pregnant.
But the air went out. But the air conditioning unit went completely out.
Oh, and the whole day.
So I have a lot of sympathy for what the White House has been dealing with. It's the middle
Also,
of
I look
August.
at these contractors, you know, how sometimes contractors like to take their sweet time. They give you an end date. Something tells me they'll be done when the president arrives back.
That's a great point.
So can you just stay another day away? I don't think you can. Yeah, you will.
Polyurethaning the floors. Can you stay out of the house for a little bit? All right, coming up here on the show, the mainstream media going nuclear over the president's tough talk on North Korea.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader, unfortunately, than an American leader.
Now it looks a little bit like we have our own nut with nukes.
Next guest says the media is making things worse.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Kid Rock just got some major support in his Senate run from an unexpected spot. We will tell you from...
And welcome back. From fire and fury to locked and loaded, President Trump has amped up his tough talk aimed at North Korea, and the mainstream media is having trouble with it.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader, unfortunately, than an American leader.
It used to be that we looked at the North Koreans and said, you know, those are the nuts with nukes. Now it looks a little bit like we have our own nut with nukes.
This is the first time that the dangerous apocalyptic statements of the North Korean regime have been met by dangerous apocalyptic statements by the President of the United States.
We have never heard this kind of bluster from an American president to another world leader.
Well, Bree Payton is a reporter with The Federalist. She joins us now with her reaction. Bree, we've never heard this type of rhetoric before from an American president. Is that true?
You know, what I think has been the most frustrating thing to watch is how the media has been irresponsibly hyping up the tensions between our two countries. I mean, in just those couple of sound bites that we watched, we can see that this is what they're trying to do, right? And the Daily Mail actually released a live stream of Guam, so that way if North Korea decides to end up making good on that empty threat, everyone can watch it live, right?
Right.
And I think that kind of behavior is really irresponsible because, you know, at the moment, that threat that they made against against Guam is a totally empty threat. We have zero proof that they're able to successfully launch an intercontinental ballistic missile at all. None of the allies are freaking out. There's been no UN resolutions, right? So this kind of overreaction, this kind of behavior, I think ramps up the tensions in an irresponsible manner.
Let's read one of President Trump's tweets this week about locked and loaded. Here's what he said in context. Military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded, should North Korea act unwisely. Hopefully, Kim Jong-un will find another path. What's wrong with that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything, wrong with that statement. A lot of members of the press corps decided to really hone in on the locked and loaded portion of that tweet and freak out and act like he invented that phrase and that it means some crazy thing, right? When you and I know exactly what it means exactly that. And I think that this kind of behavior is almost like the media is rooting for Donald Trump's failure and North Korea to attack us, right? So that way they can say, I told you so, which is totally ridiculous. Turning a critical eye to the media, here's what the New York Times. The New York Times correspondent responded this week with a tweet in response to that locked and loaded. Said Trump knows TV. He just added a new catchphrase, new anchors, and new chyrons after fire and fury, locked and loaded. Yeah, I mean, locked and loaded has been an expression that, has been around for a really long time, right? I mean, in movies, even our political discourse, right? This isn't an uncommonly used phrase, right? So this kind of attitude and posturing that, oh, the president is inventing all of these things and he's doing things that are totally different. I mean, that's completely ridiculous, right? And as I said earlier, I think that the media is amping up the tensions between the two countries and emphasizing things, and I think that their behavior has been quite irresponsible. Right. He's going to tweet about having an apple and say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and people say, see, look what new phrase he just created. Unbelievable. Bree, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much. Great to see you, too. Thank you. Coming up here on the show, a new twist in the Fed's investigation of Jane Sanders. One newspaper just took a look at her college donors list, and the numbers don't add up. And these American heroes never get the credit they deserve, but that all changed on this honor flight. Lisa Booth is taking you on board. That next. Come on in. And we are back with some quick headlines. 19 hospital staff mysteriously getting sick, forcing the partial evacuation of a New Hampshire hospital. There are reports of a mysterious smell causing nausea and dizziness. Staff forced to set up a makeshift emergency room outside on hospital grounds. Crews still unable to find the source of that odor. The hospital could be reopened later today. Also, this reports of odor also causing chaos for JetBlue. The airline now investigating what may have caused 3 separate emergency landings within the span of just 2 weeks. On all 3 flights, many passengers and crew members, they got sick on the flight after reports of strong fumes. Several people on each flight were taken to the hospital. Yikes. That's a bad odor. Yeah. It smells great in here this morning. Odors, me. Deodorant today. Turning now to the men and women who served and sacrificed for our country, and a very special event to honor them. That's the goal behind the Honor Flight Network, which flies veterans of U.S. wars to Washington, D.C. to visit their memorials. Yeah, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth was on board one of these very special flights, and she joins us this morning with more. What an incredible experience this must have been for you. Oh, it was so incredible. And the men and women on this flight served our country in its most vilified war, and most never even received a thank you for their service. But starting an airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, that was about to change, and I went along for the ride. Take a look.
It's a thank you to your service and your sacrifice to our nation.
Today marks our 42nd honor flight. We couldn't be more proud. But this honor flight is a bit different. All 107 service members on board are veterans of the Vietnam War.
The Vietnam vets, they were treated so poorly when they came back. That should never have happened in this country. Our motto with Old Glory Honor Flight is it's never too late to say thank you. And that's why this is so important.
All on board were excited for the trip of a lifetime to Washington, D.C., including a member of the American Airlines Old Glory Honor Flight crew.
It warms my heart to be with my fellow veterans.
Bruce Ferris served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970 in the 101st Airborne Division.
We all know we didn't get a whole lot of pats on the back, didn't get a lot of thank yous. Well, as of today, that changes.
And what a change. Instead of dirty looks, these veterans received cheers, a true welcome home.
was unbelievable. I was not expecting that at all. Even the little kids were welcoming us. When we first came home, no one treated us like we had done anything, and it's different now. It's amazing.
John O'Connor Jr. served in the Navy during Vietnam, and despite his experience, he encouraged his daughter to serve her country as well.
It's just amazing to see men this strong break down and cry because it means so much to them.
It was a day full of emotion, but what made the 800-mile trip worth it was the ability to gaze upon the 58,318 names etched into the Vietnam War Memorial.
This here is basically something all of our Vietnam vets really deserve recognition.
It means a lot because I lost some buddies in Vietnam, and I'd like to look at their names.
Medal of Honor recipient Gary Luttrell was one of them. Though a frequent volunteer on honor flights, this was his first with his brother and sisters in arms from Vietnam.
When I look at those names, they're not names to me. Those are little 18, 19-year-old faces that come back to life temporarily. In my heart, my soul, my eyes.
He was not the only one who saw more than a name on the wall.
I've got a few friends on the wall here that I wasn't able to meet. People there's stories like that about everyone on this wall. You know, I don't know what to say. I get too choked up.
And it wasn't just the wall that caused tears to flow. Lorna House joined the Army as a nurse in 1967. She was one of over 265,000 women who served during Vietnam.
Women were a part of the whole Vietnam experience, and none of us was drafted to go to war. We all volunteered.
They finally got their own memorial in 1993.
It is so amazing. It is just unbelievable.
And the day of healing was far from over.
Dear Mr. Graham, thank you for your service in the Vietnam War.
Part of the honor flight's tradition is mail call, where veterans receive letters of thanks for their service.
It feels great. These letters I got make my whole day. It's the best part of the trip.
And thousands cheered their return back in Wisconsin, showing that it's never too late to say thank you and welcome home.
So many Vietnam veterans did not get a welcome home, and it seriously affected them emotionally and mentally.
I'm so glad that they've done something like this, where they've actually honored us.
This is just amazing, just absolutely incredible. One of the best days of my life.
Wow. Really neat, touching.
That was so special, Lisa. And I love the woman angle, because you don't even think about that. Well, it was just such a wonderful day, and I know everyone from Sam, who did such a good job producing this, to the camera crew, and also myself, you know, we were all just so moved by the day. I mean, it's just such a special thing to be a part of, because a lot of these Vietnam vets, they didn't get the welcome home that they deserved, and they got treated very poorly by our country, and so it was just so special for them to feel the appreciation, both from just even stepping off the plane in Washington, D.C., having a crowd of people there, having little kids there with signs saying, welcome home, you know, God bless America, we love you. And then just for them to be able to spend the day together, because they just had such a unique experience that they all shared as Yellow Ribbon veterans. And so it was just such a special day to be a part of, and just getting to know each person's story.
It's because of Vietnam veterans that the Iraq War veterans, who were in also a controversial war, were welcomed home properly. And so you feel a kinship for these guys. Can't even imagine coming back and being treated the way they were. Thank goodness, you know, folks are taking it into their own.
We learned our lesson.
And that's why it's important to remember that moment. They finally get a hero's welcome. Absolutely, and one that they deserve. Yeah. And the Yellow Ribbon Honor Flight wouldn't have been possible without American Airlines. The whole crew on board the flight, including the pilots, were all volunteers. To learn more about the program, you can go to honorflight.org, and you can also find your local hub there as well.
Very cool.
Thanks, guys. It was a beautiful day.
Well, we're moving on now with some hard news. A Fox News alert. President Trump says North Korea will, quote, regret it fast if they attack one of our allies. But what happens if Kim Jong-un doesn't listen? Our panel here to discuss next.
Plus, Hillary Clinton's Benghazi scandal is not over yet. A federal judge ordered the State Department to look for her emails. Could we finally get some answers? We've got a big show still ahead.
Pesky Hillary email.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. And it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. He utters one threat. He will truly regret it, and he will regret it fast.
From fire and fury to locked and loaded developments happening quickly around North Korea. Here to weigh in on the latest in that situation is former CIA analyst covering Korea and who met recently with North Korean officials, Dr. Sue Mi Terry, former CIA operative Mike Baker, and former U.S. Army intelligence officer Andrew Peek. Thank you all for being here on live and in the flesh this morning with us. We appreciate it. You were in North Korea in June, met with some North Korean officials. What's the calculation there?
I was in Sweden.
Okay, got it. You met with them.
Right.
But what's the calculation inside the Kim Jong-un regime right now as they hear this rhetoric from our president?
Well, Kim Jong-un regime is bent on perfecting its nuclear arsenal and nuclear program. So they will have to continue doing that. But I think what they're not going to do is attack Guam or any part of the U.S. territory because they know that that's
So you think
suicidal.
that Ring of Fire threat was just that, and they won't be able to follow through on it?
They're not suicidal. They're not ideological. Regime preservation is #1 goal, and they know that if they go against the United States in an all-out war, they will 100% lose.
Okay, so that's the understanding of the Kim Jong-un regime. Mike, you know, we talk a lot about missiles and bombers and things like that, but what covert options might the Trump administration have, hypothetically, against this regime?
Right, yeah, and obviously it's a sensitive topic.
Sure.
What you can say is that we have been gaming this out for years, right? And by doing that, you're looking at all your options. And nowadays, that means everything from cyber interference and cyber attacks to spec ops, covert operations. It's a limited table of options, in a sense, because of the unknowns. What happens when you spin this up, and what happens then in terms of the escalation?
Sure.
But you work through all the various scenarios, and you use all the resources that you have at your disposal, and that does include all those things that are off the radar screen that people don't see and don't need to see.
Ultimately, getting rid of nuclear sites, though, would include something overt and quite robust. What would that actually look like? You mentioned potentially special operations forces, but also obviously missiles and bombing capabilities.
Yeah, I think Mike's right. I think there would be a number of options that would be part of a total package. You know, I think the special operations part of this is extremely difficult. It would have to be a very, very high-risk mission very early before any airstrikes, because once airstrikes begin, this element of surprise is totally lost. Then you may as well just send in infantry to try to take care of nuclear sites and missile launchers and anti-air systems. So it would be a challenging mission for special operations, but you'd have to look at it as well as things like drones and airstrikes to try to neutralize the nuclear sites.
Doc, you mentioned that when you met with the officials, they were more cocky and confident than you'd ever heard them. Do you feel like they will take some action, feeling like they need to respond to this president, but it'll be more measured than, say, a ring of fire around Guam?
Yes, I mean, they will have to continue with the tests. So I think there's going to be another ICBM test, maybe down the road, even a nuclear test. But again, that's not an attack. And they can't do that because they cannot walk away from trying to test a nuclear weapon or missile test because they're bent on it, on completing the program. And domestically, Kim Jong-un will lose standing if he backs down from it. And he just can't do that. He just can't do that.
Mike, we just learned a couple of days ago that the DIA assessed in 2013 that they had miniaturized their nuclear capability. Does that surprise you, or is that generally known?
No, well, it wasn't generally known, but
within the